The One Piece verse has a variety of characters, and the one group that interests me the most are very powerful characters that we haven't seen yet. Characters in the One Piece world that are extremely powerful, but Oda hasn't introduced these guys yet. Now, these characters don't have to be on equal grounds with the Yonko or the Admirals, but these are characters that I think would give the current top tiers a good fight even if they lose. Now, I find it hard to believe that it's only the Yonkos and the Admirals that are considered to be the very top in the vast world of One Piece. I feel like this is something not a lot of people are talking about. Now, one of the main reasons that I think there could be more insanely powerful individuals out there is because of the world military draft that happened 2 years ago during the 2-year time skip, right? And with the military draft, we literally had 2 people come out of nowhere, and these individuals had admiral level potential, or at least they were strong enough to be recognized as the world government's greatest military powers. Now, even though Fujitara and Green Bull may not be as strong as the previous Admiral trio, which is something that I agree on, they have to be pretty relative in power because they hold the same title as Admiral. And I'm guessing to become an Admiral, there's a bunch of requirements in which a base level of strength is absolutely needed. Now, to become an admiral, I definitely feel like you have to be all-rounded as a fighter. Admirals are usually very versatile in battle. They are relatively proficient in all forms of haki, most likely having advanced in all forms. They usually also have skill sets like swordsmanship and other forms of combat, and I would imagine that they also have years of combat experience. You have to be above the norm to be chosen as an admiral. And so you have Fujitara and Green Bull, who were individuals chosen from the general public, and these guys were acknowledged by the world government to become one of its strongest fighters, right? That's huge because it makes you wonder if there's actually more people like that in the One Piece world, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before we keep going, this video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Now, watching restricted Netflix shows has always been a problem, as well as worrying about the potential of hackers getting their hands on your personal data. But worry not, as this is where Surfshark VPN comes into play. Surfshark VPN keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all the information between your devices and the internet, which in return protects all your personal data from the looming eyes of hackers and big companies. It also has this feature of allowing you to change your IP into a new one, and there's different countries that you can choose from, which in return enables you to watch shows that are for the most part restricted. In other words, it gives you the ability to watch a lot of shows that you couldn't watch before due to area restriction. And by using my code Pharaoh, you will be able to get your hands on Surfshark VPN at 83% off. And to top it off, there is also a Black Friday special that's taking place. So instead of the usual 3 months for free, you will be getting 4 months for free. And this is for a limited time only, so you might as well get it as soon as you can. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. So again, links will be in the description. Check it out and remember to use my code Pharaoh. Now, back to the video. Now, people usually say that Fujitara and Green Bull were given their devil fruit from the government because people have this idea that the government has ways of getting overpowered devil fruit abilities, and because of that, they become strong enough to be recognized as an admiral. Now, that might not necessarily be the case because it seems like these guys already had their fruits before joining the Marines, and this really goes back to what Green Bull said. Now, he said that he hasn't eaten in 3 years, which is highly hinted to be his devil fruit ability because Oda loves to tease abilities before he actually reveals it, and we know that the military draft happened 2 years ago. So he had a devil fruit ability before joining the Marines, and the same could be said about Fujitara. Now, this is all speculation because we don't have full proof yet. And so I think the notion that the admirals are given a fruit before they become an admiral isn't necessarily 100%. Some of these characters may have already had your devil fruits before joining into the Marines. And this usually takes me back to a massive misconception about Fujitara saying that he was testing his powers in Dressrosa. Now, a lot of people fail to realize that that was actually a mistranslation. What Fujitara was actually saying there was that he was testing the abilities of Law and Doflamingo. He used an asteroid to see whether they were capable of handling such power. It wasn't actually in reference to his own ability. So I think that overpowered abilities like the ones the Admirals and the Yonkos have aren't just limited to these characters, but it's also something that other non-prominent characters could have as well. And so I think there should be more individuals in the verse that could rival the current top tiers. They're just not as prevalent as the Yonko and the Admirals. People are not going to know about you if you haven't done anything relevant enough, even though you're an extremely strong fighter. And Fujitara and Green Bull may be an example of this. These guys were probably standalones that didn't really stay in the spotlight for them to get noticed. Now, Mihawk also fits in this category in a sense, but he has a world title, which makes him very noticeable, and he does have affiliations with other Yonkos, which probably bolstered his reputation even more, which is why the Marines seeked him out. He was a powerful fighter, and they wanted his strength. But with Fujitara and Green Bull, it seems like these guys were just off of the radar. They didn't really do a lot to attract fame. And this is something that I thought we were also going to get in Wano as well. Given that Wano was isolated, I was of the assumption that we were going to get someone who was on the same caliber as Mihawk, or the guy that is just second to Mihawk in terms of swordsmanship. And given that the samurai aren't allowed to leave Wano, this means that this person would not be known to the world, but only to the people of Wano, because news never gets out. Now obviously we have Odin, but I felt like we were going to get more individuals like him. And this is why I believe Akainu wasn't eager on sending Kizaru to Wano, because he would have said to himself that we recruited individuals like Fujitara and Green Bull out of nowhere. Is there a chance that Wano could have individuals like that as well? On top of the fact that they didn't have any intel on Wano, it was a place outside of their jurisdiction, therefore we're going into unknown territory. I feel like Akainu's decision there wasn't that crazy as some people make it out to be. I feel like he was worried about the potential of the unknown, and that's why he was very cautious. But so far, we haven't really seen anyone that special, except for Odin obviously, but that was 20 years ago. Initially, there was some hype for Orochi, given the portrayal that he had before Wano, in which he and Kaido had a sort of mutual alliance, but given what we've seen so far, Orochi is not that guy. Now, I will say that the samurai are powerful, but not as powerful as they are given credit for. Akainu had absolutely no need to be afraid of these guys. However, I do see why he chose not to send Kizaru. Now, we come to Elbaf. Now, Elbaf is also a place of prestige within the story, because it is said to be the strongest nation in the world. And that is a title that supersedes Wano, and it makes sense, and here's why. Now, even though giants individually haven't been portrayed to be exceptionally strong, as a whole, these guys are going to give anyone issues. An entire civilization of giants is nothing to sneeze at. Now, I personally think that there's going to be at least 1 or 2 individuals on Elbaf that can fight top tiers on equal terms. And I'll talk about this in a separate video, where I think that we're going to see giants with devil fruits on Elbaf. Mythical Zoans, Paramecias, Logias, regardless of what class it is, it's going to be broken if a giant has a devil fruit ability. And I think this is the reason Oda hasn't shown much from giants, because of how crazy giants would be if they had devil fruit abilities. He's shown every other race with devil fruits except giants. And Big Mom even goes further to say, with her powers and that of Elbaf, they would have the power to defeat the other Yonkos, including Whitebeard, who could have been the strongest Yonko 5 years ago, because she referenced him in a different light. And this struck me as being very odd. Obviously, Elbaf has an army of giants, right? But I feel like that wouldn't be enough to topple another Yonko. And so I feel like Elbaf most likely has a individual whose power Big Mom respects. It could be Loki, Thor, Odin. Given that Elbaf seems to be heavy on Norse mythology, it would make sense that the devil fruits they have will also be Norse themed as well. So giants, even though they get dismantled every so often, they definitely have some form of hype. And you also have to think about it from a story perspective. As the story keeps progressing, so does the level of strength of characters that we're going to see moving forward. Luffy is going to defeat Kaido in this arc, and so if you want to progress the story in which we're going to fight tougher enemies, I feel like Elbaf is going to have an extremely powerful fighter that Luffy may have to deal with. Now, I also think Elbaf is going to be Usopp's arc, but I feel like Luffy is going to play a role in fighting someone in that arc, and I don't see him steamrolling over these individuals. Then we have CP0, which are known to be the strongest intelligence force within the world government, and currently there's about 8 members in total that we know about, including Rob Lucci, Kaku, Spandam, and Stussy. Now, in regards to their power, from all the things that we know about them, they should be pretty strong, given that they are essentially the individuals in charge of taking care of the Revolutionary Army. Even Sabo, who was able to fight against Fujitara, avoided the CP0 during Dressrosa. And during the whole Blackbeard and Dragon scuffle at Baltigo, it was stated that they clashed with Blackbeard and chased him away. We also have to realize that these guys are essentially the guardians of the Celestial Dragon, and knowing how these Celestial Dragons operate, they would probably want the strongest soldiers as security to protect them. So that was something that we should definitely take into account. Dragon is also another character that is lurking as well. An individual that is arguably one of the strongest characters just based off of his portrayal in the series. But even then, there's still a split in the community regarding his strength. He's almost in the same boat as Mihawk, where there isn't a set category to place him in. Usually when the term top tier is presented, I think of Yonko and Admirals. But Dragon is almost in a different light from these guys. Not saying that he's above them, but he's definitely not below them either. But seeing as he has 3 commanders, it makes it very obvious that he should be comparable to the Yonkos in terms of strength, as his faction seems to follow the trend of the Yonko, in which there's a captain and then there's 3 commanders under said individual. I'm just hoping that Oda delivers with Dragon, because we're approaching the end of the story. Now, something a lot of people aren't also talking about is the level 6 prisoners who escaped Impel Down. Now, the whole story is that after Blackbeard made the prisoners fight to death, a good amount of them escaped, and it's definitely something that Oda hasn't expanded upon either, at least not canon wise anyways. The only sort of follow-up we got in the manga was from John Bart in Dressrosa, who was a bounty hunter, and he was trying to capture the prisoners that escaped. Now, interestingly, he did say that he knows where they are, but apart from that, the other form of follow-up was Bullet from Stampede, and also Grundy World from the special that came out years ago, which was during Luffy's training with Rayleigh, which happened sometime during the time skip. And we learned that World was actually one of the individuals that was able to escape from level 6 of Impel Down, as well as Bullet from Stampede. There was also another character, but he was from a game and he was called Redfield, and apparently he had a mythical vampire Devilford. But apart from that, we didn't really get anything in the main story. But given that there are individuals that escaped from level 6 of Impel Down, that should automatically put them on the same caliber as Blackbeard's Yonko commanders, at the very least. And there's also a possibility that some of them might be actually stronger than Blackbeard's commanders. Douglas Bullet was obviously an example of this, even though he's non-canon. But the point still stands. So I do wonder if Oda is actually going to expand upon this in the main canon storyline, because there is a high possibility that some of the prisoners that escaped have made their way into the New World. I think sooner or later, we're eventually going to meet 1 or 2 individuals that are from level 6, and maybe the lurking legend could be tied to all of this as well if that wasn't Rocks, because I know there's a bit of conflict in terms of what Rocks actually is and the lurking legend. Again, that could be something Oda could be referencing here again. You know, it's not foolproof yet. So I feel like there's definitely some potential with what Oda could do with this plot line, because Oda has the chance to introduce some really interesting characters, and that could lead way to us getting more information as to what happened during specific timeline in One Piece, right? I feel like that could be really interesting if Oda chooses that route. And I feel like it's also time that we get some information about Scopper Gaban. I was of the idea that he was going to show up in Wano, but it could be upcoming arcs where he shows up, given that he was sort of the more prominent members of the Roger Pirates. We started the story learning about Roger first and foremost, and then we eventually met Rayleigh, and I think we will be meeting Scopper Gaban sometime soon, whether it is in Elbaf or upcoming future arcs. And we do know that he was the navigator for the Roger Pirates, and we know that Nami's role is going to become very essential, because once we do map out where to find Rafto, we're going to see Nami's skills come into effect, and maybe Scopper Gaban may have some tips here and there for her. Who knows? But how do you guys feel about more top tiers being introduced to the story? Do you think we're going to get more characters like Fujitara and Greenbow, or is there even more characters like that in the story, or do you think that this is something Oda will not do? But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Comment down below what you guys think. I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. Subscribe for more One Piece content on this channel. You can follow me on Twitter at Pharaohspace. But it is Pharaoh, guys, and I will see you folks later. Peace.